Economics for Form 1, Lesson 5. So we're looking at economic systems. You know, when you look at the world today, it has kind of evolved through different economic systems. From the time of history, we had, even out there in Europe, we had feudal systems and all that. So all these were considered under the traditional system. And the traditional system was characterized by subsistence, it is also known as the subsistence economic system. So we also we have the market economic system, which is what these systems have evolved into today. These are more modern systems. We have the mixed economic system. We have the planned systems, which are the socialist and the communist systems. Now, if we want to look at them, if we take one and we consider it the traditional economic systems. This system was guided by traditional norms and culture, and actually it's not developed today. It's not actually developed. These are systems that were rudimentary and backward, these traditional systems. A bit of it still occurs today. I mean, with a developed world like we have, but you find them in some remote areas, and you could trace them in mostly backward villages in maybe Africa, Latin America, and Asia. This is where we still have feudal systems where superstition is rife, belief in witchcraft is rife, and belief in customs, local customs, and all whatnot. And you have such systems interspersed with other modern systems. If you go to Ethiopia, there are certain very backward areas where you will find such systems. In Cameroon, you could find them in some remote villages in the north and in other countries. So this system is also known as subsistence economic system. It is very backward. It is money circulation is low, investment is low, and every other thing. Now, we have what we call the market economic systems. This is a more developed system, far more developed, prevails in the modern and developed world. You see, it is guided principally by market forces. That is, they allow the market forces to determine the trend. Whereas with the other system, the traditional system, feudal lords could decide on many things. Here, it is the market, which talks now about the sovereignty of the consumer. You've certainly heard about the sentence, the consumer is king. So the consumer actually is king in this system. So it is principally guided by market forces. So another name for it, key name for it, is free economic system. It has been adopted by most developed countries, and it is proving to be very effective. You understand? So in such systems, although state control in economic systems is always kind of there, but it is very limited in the market economic systems. Very limited. Market economies are marked by freedom of choice and enterprise. So the people who are investing have a freedom of choice and they can decide on what to do. They are not compelled by a government or by a traditional ruler to invest in one particular field or another. There is consumer sovereignty. That means the market forces determine how the market is moving, how the economy is moving actually. Then the self-interest here, whoever is producing or investing is doing it for himself. He is not a humanitarian, or what they call it is not charity. They are capitalists. So when he's investing and going into the market, it is to grab as much as he can from there. Now, of course, it is characterized, the market economies are characterized by private ownership of wealth. You see, the wealth that is put there does not belong to a government or to a community, it belongs to private individuals. So they come in as entrepreneurs or as shareholders or whatever. And another characteristic is the competition. In the free economy, anybody can come in and compete. So if you are producing shoes, the market is open to any other producer of shoes. And whatever you produce, the market is open for competitors. So other names for this market economic system, we have said we can call it free enterprise, or you can still call it a laissez-faire system, or we simply call it capitalism. Now, we have the communist system here, which is one of the planned economic systems. It's one of the planned economic systems. It is a system where all the means of production is owned by the state, and the whole economy is guided by a central plan. So that is why they call it a planned system. So this is the system that existed in Russia and in China, but today this system has virtually lost its meaning and is giving way to free market economies. You see, when this system existed in Russia, if you entered a taxi, the driver was driving for the state. If you go to repair your shoes, the shoe repairer is working for the state. If you go to the tailor, he's working for the state. You go to any shop, the shops all belong to the state. So that was the market system there. And they were planned. So there was always a central plan. At the beginning of the year, the shopkeeper is told that you have to sell like this. If you produce shoes, you have to produce 1,000 pairs of shoes, etc. That is an idea of the planned economy. Well, socialist system, which is still one of the planned economies, existed too in the East. We had countries like Bulgaria, East Germany, Poland, where they had socialist governments and systems. It's one of the forms of planned economies with considerable state control. When there was still considerable state control, introduced with the advent of socialism. It existed in many countries in Eastern Europe. Here, state control over the means of production was considerable. Today, much of this has been given up to. And then we have the mixed system, mixed economic systems. The mixed economic systems, this is a system with part state control over the means of production and part market systems. So this is what you found in many third world countries. So the state had a considerable role to play in the economics of the country, despite the fact that they had some semblance of the free economic system. So many third world countries evolved with this system and ended up with the proliferation of state corporations. So you understand. So the state considered that certain activities could not be allowed in the hands of private individuals and developed state corporations which ended up being grossly misappropriated by individuals. Like you had the case of Kame and many other state corporations, which ended up badly. Then with this mixed system, we also had what we call some degree of planning, development plans as they used to call them, which were not well handled, and they all had some kind of negative outcome. So today, we can, if we notice in many third world countries, there's a move to privatize. That is, privatization means that they are shifting away from even these mixed economic systems towards the free market systems, because everybody is discovering that this is the best. So I would recommend that you go into Economics Made Easy by Whitehead, Elementary Economics by Harvey.